Welcome back, guys. In the previous videos, we basically explained how Firebase works and how you can hook up Firebase with basically any website. We've just been testing on a basic HTML page just for simplicity. And in this video, I want to explore a little bit further how Firebase works and some of the services like authentication. Now, if you've ever worked with authentication, you know what kind of a hassle it is if you need to manage users in a system and you need to manage user sign-ins and sign-outs, and if they forgot a password or any type of reset password or token authentication, and all of that kind of things is managed actually by Firebase. So they have a service where they manage that for you, and you only have to hook into that service and use that. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So what I'm thinking is maybe building a smaller little login form so that the user can log in, and then also managing our user state, or at least a very basic version of that, so that we can see if we're logged in or logged out. So if we go back to Firebase here, you can go to authentication, and then you can see there's a place where you can set up a sign-in method. So let's go and do that now. So as you can see, there's a lot of sign-in methods here, like Google and Facebook. You can also implement your own with auth too. But just for simplicity, we're just going to use email and say OK. And now if we go back here, you can see it says there are no users for this project yet. So basically, in any kind of application, you can create a user with like a sign-in form, or actually a sign-up form where users can register. So that is possible with Firebase, but just to make it easy, we're just going to add a user here. We're going to use our email that we have, and we're going to create a very difficult password and say add user. And as you can see here, this user has not signed in yet. So any users that signs in with our app will also be listed here, and here you can kind of control the user's account. You can delete it or reset the password and so on. There's also some templates here that you can use when a user resets their password or needs to verify that. You can kind of brand or change the copy of the emails. But for now we have this user, so let's go and sign in with this user in our code. So if we go back here, you will see that this is kind of where we left off. And what I want to do is I just want to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to create a folder here for our JavaScript, and I'm just going to call it app.js. And I'm going to move this Firebase config into there. Then we can clean this up, but maybe we'll just change this to say source equals JS and then app.js. These scripts will move into our head here, and then also we need to add Firebase auth as another SDK in our app. Like we have analytics here, we will now also require Firebase auth, because that is what we will use. Right, so now that we have that, if we go back to our app, let's just do that. You'll see that it looks like the same application we have here, but now it also has Firebase auth inside there. So let's create a little login form, and for that I want two inputs here, and I'm just going to make a text input, and I'm going to give it an ID of email, and let's say a placeholder of email as well. And then also, and again, I'm just keeping it as simple as possible. We're going to make a password field and give that the ID of password so that we can reference it, and also just a placeholder of password. Then what we also want here is a submit button for our form, so that when a user logs in, they can submit this data. So this is going to be a type submit, and then the value would be submit here. Let's see how that looks. If we refresh, there you can see our little form. And if we click on submit, you will see it navigates to a separate location, because what happens is anytime you submit a HTML form, it tries to go to the action URL or the action of that form, and it will try to navigate to that script, and if you have none, it will just go to the same page. So to prevent that, we can just do a prevent default. So I'm going to add an onSubmit listener here, and I'm going to pass the event. Then if you go to our JavaScript here, we don't actually have anything here. Also, what I want to do is I actually want to hook it up with a function. So let's call this a login function, and we pass it the event of the form. And inside of our code, we'll have a function called login, and we'll receive that event. And also, we'll also have, while we're here, oops, if I can spell correctly, we'll also have a logout function for our user, but we'll get to that now. And then inside this login function, we just want to prevent the default event so that it doesn't navigate away. And if we now click on submit, you'll see it doesn't navigate away as we saw previously. So now what we want to do is we actually want to log in and log out. So what I would like is a little section for us to see when a user is logged in or logged out. So I'm gonna move this form into a section here, which would be our section a user sees when they are logged out. So I'm just gonna call this not logged in, and then we will have another section with an ID called logged in. And this is a section that the user will see when they are logged in. So I'm just going to say, you are logged in now. And just also have them, give them the ability to log out as well. And for that, we'll add a little click listener. So that will be an on click, and we'll call logout, which is referencing the function we already wrote. So now we're utilizing our login and logout functions, but they're not actually doing anything yet. And also, if you go back here, let's just fix that. Something wrong with our button there. It doesn't have any text. Okay. Oopsie. Let's just fix that. Okay. So there's our login and logout. If we click it, it's not actually doing anything, but at least it's working. Okay, so now let's hook up some code. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to actually, because right now you'll see, or maybe let's just add a little thing here that says logged out. Let's just say, let's add a little header here that says, please log in. And there you can see this is a section you want to show when a user is not logged in, and this is a section you want to show when the user is logged in. So very basic, but at the moment our application is unable to tell when you're logged in or logged out. So let's go back to Firebase. Okay, so if we go to Firebase and we go to web under the documentation and manage users, you'll see it says here, get the currently signed in user. So what they have here is a little code snippet that basically checks the auth object. It basically uses an observer to monitor the auth object, and anytime the auth state changes, it will return us a user object, which will either be null in the case of, if you're logged out, or it will be a user object in the case when you're logged in. So let's use that code in our little JavaScript script here, and inside that, this will already trigger when our application initializes. And I just want to see here, I think we're missing our Firebase init code here. I think Firebase config. I just want to have a look here. I think we're missing that. Let's quickly jump back to Firebase. Let's just say get started. let's just have a look here. I think we're still in authentication. Let's just get started at Firebase Web. I think we're missing a small piece of code here. Let's just have a look here. Yes. I think we need to initialize our app like that, which for some reason we missed that somehow. Firebase initialize app Firebase config. Cool. Now that should actually work as well. And then we can continue with this part. So what we have here is we have these two sections, not logged in and logged in. So we want to control that. So if a user is signed in, let's just first reference those sections. Not logged in equals document get element by ID. And then the same for logged in. Let's just do that. So when a user is signed in, we want to show the logged in section equals, I think we can just say .style.display. Oops. Display equals, let's just do this block. And then the not logged in section would be none. And once a user is not signed in, it will just be reversed. So let's see if that works. And let's refresh. And it works. And you can see it's currently detecting that the user is null. So it won't show that bottom section. And still our submit button is not doing anything. So let's go fix that. So if we go back to Firebase and we go to auth, authentication, web, and password authentication, that's what we're using. If you scroll down, it says you're signing a user with an email address and password. It gives us a little code snippet. So we can again just use that in our code here. So just below our login here, we will add that. Here you can see it's actually giving us, in the event of an error, it's giving us some of the error object properties that we can use, like the message and the code. So in our case, we will console.log the message to say error signing in. And the error is error.message. And we can just delete that. I also want to alert that. So if there's a problem, it displays it to the user. And then also in the case of a successful login, we can then monitor the response here. And the response object will actually be the logged in user. And then also what we can do there is we can test that. So if we actually get a logged in user, then we can maybe do another alert to say, let's just say welcome back. You are now logged in. All right, and that should work. Also for the logout, Firebase also has a little code snippet that just says Firebase auth.signout, which will sign you out and will again trigger the auth state to change, and that will then again update our display. So if we go back to our little program here, we should see now that if we click the submit button, we get the error message there. And there you can see it actually gives us that message and code that we saw previously. And it says sign in with email and password failed. First argument email must be valid string. So if we type in something there, it actually gives us another message. Let me just make sure that our caches are cleared, because I'm pretty sure we actually changed that. So we said here, oh, another thing is we're not actually passing it the email and a password. So let's fix that. we'll do the same that we did here at the top by referencing our elements. So we'll just say email and password. And again, we'll get element by ID, in this case, email and password. And in this case, we want to look at the value property of that element. So now it should pass the email and password values, and it will pass it to this function, which will then either result in an error or success, and it will display the messages there. So let's see if that is working now. If we just click on submit, there's our little alert, and it says the email address is badly formatted. So now if we type in a garbage email, it will say that. If we type in our actual email, it will complain about the password. And this is messages that we get from Firebase, which is amazing. Now we can type in the correct password. And after a while, there you see it says welcome back, you are now logged in. And there you can see it automatically detected that the state has changed, and it updated our view as we specified in the code. And now, as expected, if we log out, it logs us out. And again, the state changed, and Firebase, that off-state listener, that observer that Firebase uses, then detected the off-state change, and it updated our view. So guys, that's very easy to do, and I think that is a very easy to follow example. As you see, I used most of the code from their website and just modified it slightly, but it's really easy to get started with authentication, and none of the normal issues and worries you would have with authentication, none of that is now an issue anymore, because everything is handled by Firebase. And you can basically just control what your application should do when a user is logged in or logged out, like we have now. And it's working pretty well. So guys, in the comments below, let me know if you enjoyed this, or if you want to see more videos like this, or also if you have any questions. In the next videos, we'll probably explore a little bit more on Firebase and the different services you can use with Firebase. Thanks, goodbye.